Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review of the new Yves Tumor record, Heaven to a Tortured Mind. This is the newest full-length LP from Yves Tumor, a music project spearheaded by multi-instrumentalist, producer, singer, songwriter Sean Bowie. It is his second full-length album for the Warp label, which is hotly anticipated considering how much excitement his breakout LP stirred back in 2018, which was an intriguing mix of psychedelic, hypnagogic pop and rock with a slightly experimental edge. With this album, Bowie was certainly giving off the vibe of a weirdo auteur, not too much unlike a Dean Blunt or an Ariel Pink or a James Ferraro. But what ended up standing out on this record to me were the hookier tracks that, surprisingly enough, had a bit of a Britpop influence to them, like the fantastic single Noid, which sounds like it's straight out of London, straight out of the mid-90s, with these groovy beats and bass and a somewhat snotty English affectation on the vocals. And the genre continues to be a big influence on many tracks here, but most importantly, this is the most groomed track list of any record that Bowie has put together so far. And he doesn't totally give up his more experimental tendencies to get there. While many of the songs on this record are relatively straightforward, the oddity of Bowie's work shows up in the dark, warped, or abrasive subversions he packs into the production. Whether that be on a track that again has more of a Britpop influence, or some of the songs here that surprisingly cross over into glam rock, like the sweet and sexy highlight, Superstars. There's also a super strong hip-hop influence on the opening track, Gospel for a New Country. The way this track's chunky, blaring horn samples slap against the beat, it sounds super villainous, almost like a piece of MF Doom production. But Bowie, to this instrumental, manages to ingeniously write a very dark and tortured rock song about this girl leaving his life, needing her to light his fire and all that. It's like part Marilyn Manson, part Jim Morrison, with a touch of Damon Albarn in there too. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see an Yves Tumor feature on a Gorillaz record at some point in the future. Of course, there are plenty of other songs in the track list here that are well-structured, creatively produced, like the track Identity Trade featuring these dejected vocals, very groovy bass and drums, again, topping that with these very noisy, harsh shots of tones that are kind of industrial in a sense. The track is short, but doesn't bow out feeling unsatisfying or half-baked. Bowie somehow strikes up something equally satisfying on the even shorter Romanticist later on the record. Also one of a few moments here that reads like some pretty blatant Ariel Pink worship. The fantastic Kerosene is a moody righteous rock duet featuring Diana Gordon. Considering how the track borrows from Uriah Heep's Weep in Silence, the vague allusions to hard rock and progressive rock are not all that surprising. The blunt and seductive lyrics, the super flashy guitar solo, all of which is presented with this great, dreamy, surreal background instrumentation, but it's truly the vocal chemistry on the song that really sells it. Even more of a mindfuck, though, is the song Dream Palette, where Bowie's love of sound collage translates into a wondrous mix of fireworks and fractured guitars and layered chunks of drum fills. All of this eventually transitions into one of the darkest grooves on the entire record with some of the most harrowing vocals on the entire record, some of which come from guest vocalist Julia Cumming, who sounds like a hard rock heroine on the track. So there are great tracks peppered throughout the album, no doubt, but like with Safe in the Hands of Love, there are some truly confounding and underwhelming moments on this thing too. Mostly tracks that do actually feel half-baked, like Hastel Lights, which fades in and out without doing much to leave an impression, and yet there is too much going on to pass it off merely as just some fleeting interlude. There are also a few cuts that suffer due to Bowie not really mustering up the same charisma in his vocals that make the best tracks on here stand out, like the very sleepy and spacey Folie Imposée, which sounds like a combination of Gang of Four, The Cure, if you force them to collaborate on a dark wave synth goth song. Or the track Strawberry Privilege too, which I didn't care for too much when I first heard it, but the squeaky, strange falsetto vocals do juxtapose pretty interestingly against the very chilling girl group style harmonies that color the background of most of the track. The instrumental too is pretty dramatic despite being so skeletal. The record's final moments are just so-so, unfortunately. Asteroid Blues blues doesn't seem to be much more than just a blaring motif with a lot of pomp. It doesn't do much more than just kill time before we reach the somewhat disappointing closer, which ends up being another slow, soulful, hypnagogic jam that is not too much unlike Ariel Pink in aesthetic and tone. Sounds like something that could have even been on Before Today. The dreamy and somewhat jazzy instrumental transition around the midway point is not bad, but it doesn't develop into anything all that climactic. Overall, though, I would still say this is a very good record, and maybe a slight improvement over what Bowie had done on the previous Yves Tumor album. His vision and his sound, his style, is clearer and bolder than ever, but the inconsistent flow, the one-dimensional tracks, and the very weak ending leave me wanting more. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 7 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Yves Tumor, forever.